All right, everyone, we start off today talking about the state of Virginia. We've been mentioning that a few times, mentioned it yesterday on my live stream. This is, link in the description, not archived, just a tweet, a non-scientific poll. So this is not the kind that's aggregated on RCP. That shows Joe Biden with a 1-point lead in the state of Virginia. Normally, singular polls are meaningless. Unless they're part of an aggregate and unless they're conducted in a scientific manner, they mean quite a bit less. On their own, they're basically worthless. But it does comport to previous polling, and we don't have much of it from months ago. Back before Biden took his most recent tumble in approval and he began hemorrhaging support in the swing states. He had been a little bit ahead variously in like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. Now Trump is ahead in all of the competitive states, at least by half a point. And in some of them, he appears to be running away with it. Nevada might be off the table for the Democrats this time around, which would be hilarious. An astronomical win for Trump, by the way. Before Biden lost roughly 5 points of approval over that same period, he was only about 4 points ahead in the state of Virginia, according to the couple of polls that we had around that time. I wish they would poll more there and in Maine, because it looks like those are going to be the main pivots for the election. It doesn't look like it's going to be Nevada or Arizona, or it is certainly not Georgia, North Carolina. It looks like it's going to be Virginia and Maine, so we need more polling there. Those states are doable for him. For all of the bravado about turning New Jersey red, it's possible. It's not outside of the realm of possibility, but I think it would be a waste of time for Donald Trump to do more than a couple more super rallies there. He can get it, but it's quite a gap to overcome. But in Virginia, it looks like there's basically no gap at all. It's well within the margin of error and was almost within it for yesteryear's polling, back when Biden's support was hovering in the 40s, as opposed to being around 39. And so I think that Virginia is indeed doable. Now, it's still an uphill battle. The Democrats have an entrenched machine politic in Virginia around the D.C. burbs, around the military regions down along the coast. That's mainly Dem territory. If Trump wants Virginia, he has to hold some small town and suburban rallies there. And I don't think it would take very much to make it an even 50-50 sum game. It's close to it now. So while this singular poll doesn't tell us a great deal, and it could be an outlier, Biden could still feasibly be 5 points ahead. It'd be just within the margin of error there with that poll. It is doable. And if Donald Trump makes it look like Virginia is going to be a nail-biter, hey, I might carry the state by 10,000 votes or something, the election is fundamentally over, because that would show a major shift, at least regionally. That would affect Georgia and North Carolina, certainly. And if he gobbles those states up, it gets him pretty close to 270 right there. He only needs one more major pickup, so he needs Michigan or Pennsylvania or a couple of the other states to clinch the re-election bid. I don't see at this point, with the economy trudging in its predictable direction, no major shakeups over the last few months. The border crisis is not going to magically solve itself, nor is there any methodology with the current administration to solve it, nor is there any will to do so. There's no real end in sight for what's going on in multiple foreign theaters that the U.S. is directly involved in. And inflation has gone linear and doesn't appear to be moving much. If anything, it's ticking up a little bit now. What could I feasibly think is going to majorly change the metrics of the polling that I'm seeing between now and November? Because we're halfway through May now. We're getting on towards summer. Some of you are already there. I'm in Vermont. We're still in late spring. It's not summer until the 1st of June here in the state of Vermont. Trust me, our growing season is rather short. Interesting that someone who likes gardening and outdoorsmanship so much would live in such a miserable climate. I do admit that when you have a snowstorm in January, it looks like Skyrim and it's really calm and fun, but then the snow gets a little bit old after a while. I fully expect that when I celebrate my next birthday in January, there's a very real chance that the President of the United States is Donald Trump. And this is part of it. Virginia was basically out of play in 2020. There was no real way for Trump to have a path forward there. It was closer in 2016, but it's a state that had been leaning red for a long time, but now leans slightly blue. It's a little bit less leaning blue than like New Hampshire or Maine, but it's doable. And the Democrats, looking at probably even their internal polls, have to be concerned, because I don't think that they actually believe that the lawfare against Trump is going to change the metrics in their favor. If anything, I think some of them are beginning to regret the fact that they're attempting to persecute Trump through the legal system, both because the cases are so weak and running off the rails. Fulton, the indefinite delay of the Jack Smith case with the Mar-a-Lago documents, where in the end you might get jury instructions that basically ensure he gets found not guilty. What happens if Trump is found not guilty on all these charges before the election? Well, then it looks like persecution that failed. What happens if he's found guilty? Then they have to do an end run around the Secret Service detail. Is he going to actual jail? Is it going to be his elbow moment if he ends up in Rikers or something like that? They might shoot themselves in the foot with the lawfare as well. At this point, I think that their last sort of line of defense to stop Donald Trump doesn't even have to do with the election. They're looking at these numbers and flipping out. The more intelligent liberal commentators are all flipping their shit at this, the Bill Maher's and Jimmy Dore's, etc. Even fucking some of the leftoids. Look at Michael Moore. Even he's occasionally right. He's like a broken clock, but he's like, hey, guys, you should be more alarmed at this. Yeah, the Jack Smith case is perfectly fine. Look at the numbers. People are pissed off right now because the Democrats... Now, he ascribes it to Biden not swinging far left enough. Well, he didn't give enough student loan debt relief, he didn't pass the Green New Deal, etc., and this is pissing off the youth, he doesn't stand with Gaza and stuff like that. Again, from an echo chamber of leftoidism, that makes a lot of sense, but that's not the average, even liberal voter. They're not in favor of having an open border or granting trillions of dollars in student loan debt relief that'll hyperinflate the economy even further. Were it to pass, by the way, the inflation would show up before Biden leaves office, put the screws to the United States even more, and probably lose him the election by an even wider margin. So, to Michael Moore, be careful what you wish for. You're going to get Orange Man back into office for sure if you do that at this time. Which is why he's glad to sign off executive orders and bills and stuff that he knows will be successfully challenged in court, because the whole point is to actually lose and then blame the evil right-wing Trump-loaded Supreme Court and stuff like that. Even if it's a sympathetic federal court that injuncts it, he'll still blame Orange Man somehow. When I look at this number, I say that it's plausibly real. Because if I look at the numbers back during the more scientific polling we had, a couple of them from Virginia, and I look at those numbers, and then I look at the downtrend in Biden's approval and his downtrend in general election matchups and the swing states, and I apply roughly the same numerics to Virginia, more or less, that's the number you would expect. It's basically a 50-50. So I think Trump can win Virginia. Should he spend an inordinate amount of time there? Arguably, yes. If it's really going to be that close, then he can put it over the line with a few rallies. Just a few of them. He needs to hit up small-town Virginia, especially buff up those numbers where he has an advantage, and then hit the burbs. Because the middle-class suburbanites, they're impacted by inflation too. Even if they're in the upper middle class, they're being impacted by inflation. They don't own yachts and things like that. That's ripe Trump territory for this election, and there's a disproportionate voting base like that in Virginia in some of those areas. So Roanoke, Virginia Beach, the outer burbs of D.C., those are the areas that he would hit up, along with some of the towns in the more rural parts of the state. He's got the rural vote sewn up. He doesn't need to worry about that. He needs to appeal to people on an economic basis there mainly. I would say Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina are basically spoken for unless some sea change happens. Really, the battleground might be places like Wisconsin, a place that the Democrats really don't want to be a pivot state. Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, that area, and certainly not Virginia. They are alarmed. They just don't let on in public that they are. And they say, well, Orange Man can never return to power. The American people ought to be ashamed for even considering supporting him. You're all deplorable. Yeah, that went over really well in 2016, by the way. That's about all. Peace out.